something beside me, a light to the kerosene, and the places aren't real anymore, and the faces don't say anything, in the silent light of the mind-blown sphere. It's a game, Devil's Chess Club. Devil's Chess Club.
Welcome to American Exception. I'm Aaron Good. This is the excerpted first portion of a full episode of the American Exception podcast. If you would like to view or listen to the rest of the episode, subscribe to the American Exception podcast on Patreon. We have hundreds of episodes available for subscribers. If you want to better understand the deep politics and history of the U.S. empire, American Exception is the best place to go. The URL is patreon.com/American Exception. Subscribe if you can, and either way, please kindly like this video and subscribe to this American Exception channel. Bryce Greene, great to be with you and ready to talk about Epstein. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be here, Aaron. Glad we can talk about this crazy stuff as it comes out.
Yes, some of the stuff that has been released, and I think they are still withholding a considerable amount of material. Many documents, and a lot of things have been redacted. That you would hope maybe someday they will be less redacted. You get the sense that a lot of what's being redacted is to protect powerful people. At least I do, but they still have enough out there to be pretty damning as it is. I just have this photo up here to show these guys hanging out. I mean, Larry Summers, Epstein, Steven Pinker, and Dershowitz. This is our establishment, terrible people, which I was already aware of. Wrote a book about it, basically dissertation. But even some of this stuff is a little surprising to me in a way. What do you think is the most significant impact of this? I have some of the examples of the crazy shit that's come out in these files, and then we'll comment on. But on the whole, what do you think is the impact of this? Because it's so much to try to take in, and even think like, well, how is this going to affect this insane system going forward, and in the short, medium, and longer term? What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real window into just like the elite world, right? There's so much that happens outside of publicly documented politics, and this is really one of the only times that we're able to peek behind the curtain and see what people are saying and doing when they believe that no one is looking. And so it's very interesting to see, take aside the intrigue of Epstein's blackmail operation in general. I mean, if we're just being able to see rich people talk like they want to, and these deep connections develop, you can watch them happen in real time. It's very eye-opening into that world. And I think you mentioned that so much has come out. I think that actually might work in the benefit of some people who are implicated in this, or might have unfavorable messages in here, because there's just so much of it. And it's hard to nail down on any one thing to focus on. And I haven't really seen that many consequences for anyone, really. I mean,
only for Epstein, we assuming he's dead and that wasn't some big hoax, which I assume he was dead. I assume he was murdered or in jail.
Well, there was one of the other things that came out of this, and we might be jumping ahead a little bit, was that there was a 4chan post the day after Epstein was that was basically saying that they saw some strange events happening and someone taken out of the cell and driven away, and this new file release confirms that to be potentially a legitimate eyewitness account. Might not be true, but it was something that someone said, and they had good reason to say it. I mean, who knows what that means? But as far as consequences go, the biggest consequences I've seen are happening in the UK, right?
Oh yeah,
like Peter Mandelson, who I
yeah.
don't know very well, but I know he's like part of that Tony Blair gang of labor guys.
Yeah,
And I think
Max said that this might actually take down the Corbyn government. I mean, not the Corbyn, the Corbyn government, the Starmer government.
This
so
alt reality.
Yeah. So I don't. He knows more about British politics than me. I kind of find it even weirder and more disturbing than the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, it might explain why the British press is going into overdrive, really uncovering the biggest shocking detail about this Epstein stuff is that he was actually KGB this whole time.
Yeah. I have one of those headlines here. This is from the Telegraph. Epstein links to Putin and Kremlin spies raise fears he was Russian agent. So they're going to run with this.
So I saw several of these like British tabloid garbage outlets running with stories that were just cherry picking items from the emails and that were connected to Russia in some way, and then just going full Russiagate and saying, "Well, this proves that Epstein was a Mossad agent." They said he was running a blackmail honey trap or a honeypot on behalf of the KGB to get compromise on people. What do you think of that, Aaron?
Right. Well, that was this is completely absurd. And one of the things that happened on Twitter was one of these British sites put up an article to this effect, and they were saying that specifically that Epstein was advising on how to deal with Putin to someone, right? And then but what was left out of the tweet was that it was Ehud Barak that he was advising,
and that was public. They were like deliberately like hiding that.
Yeah, right.
Surprise.
And they turned off the comments whenever someone would mention it. So there you go. I'm gonna just go through some of these things that reiterate or reemphasize things we already know, but are just more weird proof of it. Here's just one email. It's not especially an important one, but it's a guy saying that he purchased motion sensor cameras from the Spy Store in Fort Lauderdale. It's amazing how small they are, the size of a thumbnail drive, 64-hour recording motion sensor. I'm installing them into Kleenex boxes now. I'll bring them by later today. Oh, and I just had a root canal done. It sucks. So this is like, again, the sexual blackmail stuff, was considered for a while. I mean, I don't even really know what the official or standard media understanding of all this is, but the camera work and him blackmailing people using video cameras and such, this is just more confirmation of this. I don't know.
Documented by the FBI.
And I don't know how much the media is even addressing these sort of obvious things. I feel like that's sort of the age of the condition that we're in in the last few years increasingly, is that things that have happened and that should be sort of understood by the media and analyzed are considered, it's speculative, or that's conspiracy theory, or this or that. So it's like we can't even really grapple with the things that we know to like be able to address them, because that's just our condition. So
I mean, some of the weird irony is that the only discussion of a blackmail operation run by Epstein targeting the powerful is coming from this KGB story. You don't really see that in the American press really talking about like, oh yes, Epstein was part of a major blackmail operation targeting powerful people,
right?
Unless now it's a blackmail operation run on behalf of the Kremlin, which hooray, we're in Russia.
Pedophile financier suspected of being engaged in world's largest honey trap operations. Yes, I mean links to Putin. I mean, it's completely absurd. Now here's one that is a little bit closer to the mark, I would argue, and it's from a confidential human source, and presumably the FBI would not be using this person as a confidential human source unless they had understood that this person was in proximity to the people that they are informing on. So in this case, it's Alan Dershowitz, the infamous Alan Dershowitz. CHS learned that Dershowitz influenced many students from wealthy families like Jared Kushner and Josh Kushner. They were both his students. And that Dershowitz told this source if he were young again, he'd be holding a stun gun as an Israeli intelligence agent. So this guy believes Dershowitz was co-opted by Mossad. I don't even know how co-opted would be the word that you would use, but it's funny that they use it when a guy is so completely in line with, like, you know, in wacko Zionism. Then what are you talking about being co-opted by Mossad? You're already just you just would join them in a more, you know, direct capacity. But anyway, subscribe to their mission. Yes. CHS still continues to communicate occasionally for Dershowitz. So the next part here, this is some things that we already know, but it's still fascinating. Epstein was represented by Dershowitz. The CHS remembered Dershowitz telling Acosta that Epstein belonged to both U.S. and Allied intelligence services. So that would presumably
Acosta
be
spelled with an O here for some reason.
Right. I mean, there are all sorts of typos and so on. I mean, I think.
Well, this is an FBI document, so it's not one of the Epstein emails, which is
which
makes
just
the
somebody
spelling error all the more strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can see them misspelling a name like that. It's not that, but yeah, you're right. There are a number of typos here, and but so that's some of them you are bizarre and you can't tell what they're exactly trying to say. And then there's so many redactions anyway. But getting on with this, CHS shared phone calls between Dershowitz and Epstein, during which she took notes. After these calls, Mossad would then call Dershowitz to debrief. Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him. Barak believed Netanyahu was a criminal. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates are allied against Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and Syria. Okay, so this also jives with other things we see elsewhere. This discussion of geopolitics and the sort of Game of Thrones that they think is going on over there in the Middle East. CHS became convinced Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent. So here you have people around them believing that they are Mossad agent. And like some people want to quibble over this like Mossad agent, asset, officer distinction, or is he working for some other aspect of the Israeli government? I mean, I don't really think that that's worth spending a whole lot of time sussing out. The more obvious thing is he was, by all appearances, an asset of an ultra-Zionist intelligence clandestine community. Well, I mean, that seems pretty obvious based on all these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there are all sorts of figures that pop up in like deep political history, where trying to put them in a box of saying, oh no, they're a CIA guy, or no, they're an FBI guy, or they're like there's just this one thing. It doesn't make sense. The world is so intermingled and so complicated and incestuous that if you're part of that world, if you're in that world, then that's really all you need. You don't need the credentials. You don't need the salary from the CIA or salary from Mossad. You don't have to fill out a W-2 to actually be an asset or very useful for them. And
Right.
one of the there's been so many stories. I mean, even before this most recent tranche of emails, the emails that were released in the last few months before this, they pretty much confirmed that Epstein was a Mossad asset or agent. I forget which one is technically which, but he was an asset. He was used by people in the Mossad to do things. And there's a whole series of reporting from Ryan and Murtaza Hussein at Drop Site about this. They really just go in. In one case, Epstein is building a back channel between Israel and Russia to interface over the Syria business. In another case, he was working with the Israeli intelligence and Israeli diplomats to butter up the relationship between the Gulf states, like the Gulf monarchies, right before the Abraham Accords, which was the fake peace agreement that was during Trump's first term. Any one of those things means that Epstein is an asset of Mossad, which means that
Right.
people in Mossad are using him or asking him for help in achieving their goals. I mean, there's really no other clearer definition of what an asset is than
Right.
if you're furthering their goals. Like, who cares where the paycheck ends up coming from?
Right, and I think maybe if I recall correctly, and this kind of gets into like semantics here that I find a little more tedious than anything else, but an agent versus an asset, an agent would need to be paid by CIA or Mossad,
I think
an
that's
intelligence.
it, yeah.
Whereas Epstein was de facto an agent, because where did all his money come from? It came from Wexner, who. But this is also
Yeah.
where, when you're talking about Zionism, it's a whole different world, because you're dealing with a number of extremely wealthy people. So the intelligence agency, Mossad, likely, they'd have all sorts of ways to avoid having to hire somebody directly and pay somebody directly. I mean, it's the number of Zionist billionaires in the U.S. is large. I mean, it's funny because the Jewish Zionists are a small percentage of the U.S. population, but they do not make up a small percentage of the billionaire class in the United States. Which, if you start thinking about the development of capitalism and the way that it became wrapped up in organized crime and the sort of landscape Zionist control over much of those funds in the 20th century, then you start to realize that this is a network of part criminal, part legit, as legit as anything can be in this system. Like, is any billionaire even really legit in this country in the first place? I mean, setting aside like, oh, you have so much money while people are starving. I just mean we have such a mobbed up economy that you have to have some accommodation with these forces. So it just seems like a gangsters club on top of everything else. But these are the sort of circles that he ran in. And around Epstein, the people that were most close to him, that seem most directly related to what he was, are people like Wexner and Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell. Oh, here's one where they're talking more about Qatar and so on. It's Steve Bannon. I think I'm getting Bolton on board. At least he's an adult, right?
Yeah.
So
the text messages between Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon.
Yeah. And Bannon's is my understanding of the emails is that Bannon claimed to have been responsible for getting John Bolton into Trump's White House, which is funny because Bannon's supposed to be the not neoconservative guy, and Bolton is the super neoconservative. And in this message here, in another set of them, this is funny. Steve Bannon says, Bolton only doing what Sheldon Adelson tells him to do. I got John the job, but he will not cross Sheldon. So this is really notable that the national security advisor to the president, who was this neoconservative person, who was on the surface maybe more on the American Dick Cheney Superhawk side, but here we have Bannon saying that it's really Adelson calling him the shots. Adelson, who owns the Sands Casino, which is literally a Lansky joint from back in the day in Vegas. Now they make all this money in Asia, and who knows how much of that is, laundered money. Mm-hmm. And also, when they needed to assassinate Assange, they hired Sheldon Adelson to do this. So he's powerful enough to be telling the national security advisor what to do. And when they need somebody murdered, they come to him. And his wife is Trump's biggest campaign contributor.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Trump openly, we might have talked about that here, but last month or 2 months ago, Trump was openly saying, why do I listen to Sheldon Adelson? Why did I move the embassy to Jerusalem? Why did I do this whole Golan Heights thing? Well, it's because Sheldon Adelson gave me a bunch of money. And then he gets to make the policy. He gets to walk into the White House and tell me what's up, because that's what you do when you give me $100 million. I'm paraphrasing, but he more or less said exactly that. And then Miriam Adelson was in the room, and she was kind of just like laughing, like yeah.
Right.
That's what the relationship is.
If we're gonna really address what has happened to the U.S. empire over the course of the 20th and into the 21st century, we should probably put Meyer Lansky on the dollar bill, maybe Roy Cohn on one of the bills, George Hunter White of the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. He's an MK Ultra dude also. I mean, we've been shaped by the most nefarious forces imaginable. I mean, Adelson represents the continuity with the National Crime Syndicate, which was tied to Zionism under Lansky and the Teamsters, and the Mafia as sort of a junior partner. And this is the country we have now. So here's one from Jeffrey Epstein. So with friends in high places, from one of the Rothschilds family. Long day sitting on bank board. Numbers are okay, but not satisfactory. I just need not satisfactory. I need not making enough money. So, let's discuss Ukraine. This is March 2014, which wasn't the coup in February of 2014.
Yes, it was. This was
So-
like mere weeks after the whole overthrow, the snipers massacre, and
Right.
Yanukovych leaving.
And Zelensky is a guy who was had an affinity toward Israel, said he wanted to make Ukraine the next Israel, and so on and so forth. So this just shows what these people are up to and what this neocon foreign policy is all about. It's, of course, there's geopolitics to going after Ukraine, but there's a lot of money and crime going on there, and there's people that'll be looking to capitalize on that. And who is it that can best capitalize on those things? The people who have the most money already, the billionaire, zillionaire Rothschild family, which really is a family of oligarchs.
Yeah, the Rothschild connection, I think, is very interesting because what was her name? Ariane de Rothschild. She's like the CEO of the big bank, and again, Dropsite did a big report on that, and they have pictures of Epstein hanging out with Ariane, and apparently they got Epstein was the connecting tissue between the Rothschilds and Ehud Barak on some cyber security firm. Like millions of dollars in cybersecurity deals. Let me see. They negotiated a $25 million contract with Epstein's Southern Trust Company, the same company Epstein used to fund Barak's intelligence-linked security startup, Reporty Homeland Security, now known as Carbine. And so these are intimately linked worlds with each other. Like the Rothschild banking empire, the Israeli security state, and of course the Epstein class, the Epstein network, and this has been going on for years and years and years. I think it goes back to 2015 or something, or 2013. But it's just a very close relationship. I recommend people check out that that Rothschild report because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's good that outlets that are sort of in the mainstream are trying to address this, even though, I would obviously go further than a lot of these dudes. But anyway, here's more Epstein. Hey, would you like to come? This one I'm not quite sure who it's to. Would you like to come to the Rothschilds' house with me and Ehud Barak on the 30th? That's funny. So, the Rothschilds, for people that don't know, I know everybody likely knows the name at the very least, but they are featured as the sort of central villains for people who blame everything on Jewish oligarchs, pulling all the strings everywhere around the world. And they are a family with considerable power because they have a whole lot of wealth. More than a century ago, I think 2 centuries ago, really, they cornered the bond market in England by using their intelligence networks because they knew the outcome of of Waterloo. I think it was really with Napoleon, and they knew of Napoleon's defeat earlier, and they managed to parlay that into making a killing in the bond market because of that. And so, and additionally, they famously, the Balfour Declaration was written between Balfour, the foreign secretary, and Rothschild, which is just was just a private citizen, right? But a huge backer of Zionism. And in the 20th century, after the establishment of the State of Israel, one of the Rothschild's bankers, a guy named Tibor Rosenbaum, worked with Meyer Lansky, and they basically created this infrastructure of financing Zionist causes and operations and so on that was intertwined with Lansky banks that were also connected to the CIA as well. So it really implicated the CIA in all of these nefarious activities and is part of how the Israelis became intertwined with the U.S. national security state, sometimes even without the knowledge of high officials, like including the director of the CIA under JFK or JFK himself. I would guess that Eisenhower was not aware of many of these things that were going on because he would have opposed them likely. But James Angleton and counterintelligence and Henry Anslinger and then J. Edgar of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI were all essentially protecting Lansky and or very close to Israel. So this is a big part of what we would think of as the deep state. It's not the only part of it. It's one sort of coalition within the deep state, but it became more and more powerful as the U.S. sort of financial empire grew, and as the clandestine deep state dark side of the government became more and more powerful. I mean, and I think once they killed JFK especially, it was clear that they were not going to have anyone in power that was counter to their interests. So it's not merely the Rothschilds and not merely Zionists, but there is a whole class of oligarchs who are intertwined with organized crime, and this is really what the Epstein saga is bringing to light, even if most people don't have the context to put it into. And here's another Epstein one, and this is Epstein talking about the Rothschilds. As you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds. I was hoping to figure a way for the bank that has 160 billion in management can do something in tech. Best client list in the world. Prehistoric products. It can wait. Good luck in China. I'll be in Europe again. Blah, 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 blah. Then the island. So if you want to come around the world going west, come to the island. What would you like to meet in Saudi at the end of the month? And this one is to Peter Thiel. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way you put it of this being the deep state, I think is the best way to put it, because you're watching the way in which these deals, in which these connections, in which these relationships are developed outside of public view, but with extreme impact on the way the public affairs, the way the stuff that we watch in the news every day.
The way that history unfolds.
Yeah.
The way the Iraq War happens, for example, and the Ukraine War and things like this. I mean, they're obviously not in those kind of state-level decision-making, but you see, and this is why I talk about the tripartite state, because Jeffrey Epstein is connected to intelligence officers of the U.S. and Israel, apparently. Okay, and so there is this realm, it's the national security state, and this is a problem affecting democracy because of security officials that would use people like Epstein, okay? But there's this other, even deeper, more sinister force, which isn't even about a bureaucratic security state. It's really the power of oligarchy.
Right.
And that is what is backing and propelling people like Epstein, people like Thiel. How do you even classify Thiel? You can't just say he's a bureaucrat in the national security state. No, he's a private oligarch. So people like Peter Thiel today, like Howard Hughes back in the day, the Rothschild family. This is the tripartite state. It's the deep state. It is the oligarchy. It is the apex of politico-economic power in the West.
Yeah, because I mean, if we look at the way the first Trump administration played out, Epstein had a lot of tendrils in there. I mean, he was close with Michael Wolff, who was deeply integrated into the Trump White House. In fact, he wrote the first major book because he had so much access within the Trump White House. He was very close with Steve Bannon, who, as we were talking about earlier, I mean, Steve Bannon had a major role in. He was actually a White House official. I forget his role. But for 6 months,
he was an advisor of some kind.
Yeah, he was like an official, on payroll advisor to the president. And he was
he's
texting
so weird,
Jeffrey
Bannon is. He looks like a alcoholic older version of Mel Gibson to me. Like if Mel Gibson were homeless and put on a bunch of weight and drank all the time, he looks like Bannon.
He looks like if a cigarette had an alcohol problem. That's what he looks like.
Yeah, he's got an ill-favored look at this point. I mean, whatever it is, that is what it is. But he's a creepy dude.
Yeah. I actually don't know. You know how Bannon has the War Room show? I used to tune in occasionally and just hear him yapping about random stuff. But I wonder what his audience thinks of all this, because I actually don't know who the like Steve Bannon watchers are. Like, I have no idea who these people are.
I feel that
like,
way about the entire right wing, like Ben Shapiro,
yeah.
who's
You're
like, I can't wait for the next Ben Shapiro podcast to drop.
Yeah. Like, who's watching Tim Pool? Who's like, oh, I can't wait for Timcast today.
I think it's all a bunch of bots, man.
It's gotta be.
I mean, do you ever
But
see
these bots
anybody...
apparently end up voting for Trump and shit, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to get out more, but I wonder what these people think of, like...
I don't think getting out more, you wouldn't encounter these people, because these are not people that go out necessarily into the world.
Yeah, I just need to drive through middle America and just
you need to go into more random people's basements.
Yeah, I need to get a green book and then go to all those areas where they tell me not to go.
Yeah, it's... Okay, so... Yeah, there's a lot of Indiana. Well, you're right near Martinsville. So better watch it.
Like, maybe if I drive up, 30 minutes north, I'll be like, hey, does anyone here watch Steve Bannon?
Yeah.
They'll be all like,
be careful, man. They spat on my friend there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's it was the former KKK headquarters. And he's a black guy. He's darker than you, so they would have really not liked him because he's from Africa. So he's like his whole family is just all African. And he said that they just spat on him. And he said, "I hate Martinsville, and I won't stop. I'll drive another 20 miles even if I'm on fumes." And I'm like, well, I can understand that.
I actually went and knocked doors up in Martinsville for like someone running for Congress back during my undergrad.
Was it better than you? Were you surprised that it wasn't as bad as you thought, or what happened?
Well, I mean, I was surprised that I didn't feel as in danger as I did. There were Confederate flags everywhere. There were a lot of people. You knock their door, they're like, "Get out! Like go away! Get out of my property! I'm armed," and stuff like that.
Did you hear any shotgun cocking?
I didn't hear any, but there are no shortage of signs. The sign that's like trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again, type stuff. It's just stuff like that. But I bet they got Steve Bannon on in the background there.
You might be right about that. Here's another one, and I'm not going to belabor this one too much, but he's talking to Barclays CEO Jess Staley and then some other investor, Jacob Frankel, I don't know. And he's saying, Jeffrey Epstein is saying, "Surprise, surprise," in response to, which sounds like a kind of sarcastic surprise, surprise. And it's in response to them saying, "Against all odds, we've been granted a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu." And I think the Jess Staley guy had to resign because of his links to Epstein. So,
oh, he did.
Yeah. So this was a while back, but so anyway, This is a dude who's around. Did he have a role in facilitating this? I mean, that's one way to interpret his potentially sarcastic reply here, is that he may have known about this, but that's a disturbing one. There's also something similar with the RFK Jr.'s wife suicide. Oh, yeah. And then he goes like, whoops. We were just thinking, that is really weird. I mean, it's creepy, but is it really, what does it even point to? I don't know. But this one to me is amazing. It's from Epstein to you don't know who. And the subject is, he was passed away. And this is in 2018. And he writes, and this one is, these things are in just quotation marks here. So, what does that indicate? Is he, the most logical explanation to me is that he is conveying what was told to him by Ghislaine Maxwell. Robert Maxwell threatened Mossad. He told them that unless they gave him £400 million to save his crumbling empire, he would expose all he had done for them. In that time, he had free access to Thatcher's Downing Street, Reagan's White House, the Kremlin, corridors of power through Europe. Maxwell passed on all the secrets he learned to Mossad in Tel Aviv. In turn, they tolerated his excesses, vanities, and insatiable appetite for a luxurious lifestyle and women. He told his controllers who they should target and how they should do it. He appointed himself as Israel's unofficial ambassador to the Soviet bloc. And some people have tried to suggest this is also like pointing to a Russian hand in Epstein. But if you know the history of this era, because Maxwell rose in prominence in the 70s and 80s, and then in the late 80s begins to have some troubles and ends up dead, thrown off of his yacht. But he'd also been involved in the Promise scandal and had used John Tower to sell Los Alamos Laboratories, which is the nuclear headquarters of the U.S., Promise Software, which had an Israeli backdoor on it. It was the Israeli version of this, and this caused a big scandal and may have been it's related to the events that unfolded in the later Reagan years, like Iran-Contra and the October surprise scandal, getting hearings in Washington and BCCI, and ultimately the defeat of Bush. But it's like Reagan and H.W. Bush, both in those years, were moving towards, they were calling for, recognizing, and taking steps towards the creation of a Palestinian state.
That was the Oslo. That's how you get Oslo.
Yeah, it led to that. But surprise, surprise, there are so many scandals for both of them. Like Reagan's Iran-Contra becomes this huge thing for Reagan. And then under H.W. Bush, Iran-Contra is still being pursued by Congress. And the more that you think about it, the more it's like, why does Congress suddenly start? Because we see what they do now. Look at all the clandestine CIA crimes and shit that have been exposed in the last 20 years. Congress doesn't do anything about it. Why did they do it in the 80s? Well, it's pretty well established that Israel owned Congress in the 80s and in the 90s and so on. And so maybe this is what happened. This is why. And BCCI was taken down by super pro-Zionist sources, and that was another scandal for Bush. So this whole era is really important. And when you think about Maxwell going to the Soviet Union as an unofficial ambassador for Israel, then consider what happens after the fall of the Soviet Union. You have all of these Zionist oligarchs who basically loot the entire country, which was, if you talk about a neocon intelligence operation that is financial and devastating to a country, this would have fit that description to a T. They looted Russia, these oligarchs did, and they had backers in the West, and a disproportionate amount of these oligarchs were Jewish Zionists in the Soviet Union. So if you think that like Putin and Maxwell would have been on the side of those oligarchs that destroyed Russia, and Putin is the leader, the statesman who confronted these oligarchs and began to put Russia back on its feet, to the point that today they are defeating NATO in Ukraine. So people do not understand this history, and they are very quick to want to jump on the Russian boogeyman or somehow exonerate, Israel and all this. And I think that the reality is something quite different, and that the neocons and the U.S. elite and Zionist oligarchs and spooks are very much implicated in the terrible history of the last 35 years. This is the mindset of the people that run this empire. And I think the more that people understand that, the better. I wish that there wasn't such a right-wing flavor to so many of the people that are really fixated on Epstein, because they're missing the point, which is this system has to have figures like Epstein, and it always has had a organized crime presence and a sort of clandestine presence, because if you didn't have that, you couldn't ensure that democracy would always lose. You might actually have the politicians sometimes doing things in the public interest. You need to have that veto power. You need to have Dennis Hastert, who's totally controlled because he's a pedophile, right? As the Speaker of the House. These are the things that you need. You must have the protection of crime in high places. Yeah. And with that, Bryce Greene, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
For access to the rest of this episode and the rest of our vast and growing library, subscribe to the American Exception podcast on Patreon. The URL is patreon.com/American Exception. Thanks to Dana Chavarria for producing this episode, and thank you for tuning in. I also want to express my deep appreciation to all of our American Exception subscribers on Patreon. Please do consider subscribing to the American Exception podcast on Patreon. The URL is patreon.com/American Exception. American Exception exists thanks to our Patreon subscribers. On YouTube, we will never be viable. You may notice that we have dropped the Devil's Chess Club title from these episodes. After David Talbot had to leave our team due to his second, more debilitating stroke, I kept the Devil's Chess Club name and theme song and intro. I didn't want to close the book on David's partnership with Bryce and me. I had hopes that he would return. David and I had planned to write 2 books together after 2024, one on the ultra-Zionist neocon takeover of U.S. foreign policy, and another on the RFK assassination. It now seems very unlikely that David will return to podcasting or to writing. As such, it didn't make sense to keep using the Devil's Chess Club brand. Still, to pay homage to David and the outstanding books that David wrote with his wonderful research assistant, Karen Croft, we're going to keep using the Devil's Chess Club theme song intro for our video episodes. David, if you're listening, know that we miss you very much. Finally, and again, please do consider subscribing to the American Exception podcast on Patreon. The URL is patreon.com/American Exception. Subscribe so that American Exception can continue to mind the darkness.